Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Shrinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Tridiyantasto Yabhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttame Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. Good morning, Hare Krishna. A reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, verses 39 and 40. Maitreya Uvacha Iti Udhatritam Makarnya Bhagavat Naradastada Prita Pratyaha Tambalam Sadvakyam Anukampaya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The sage Maitreya continued. The great personality Narada Muni, upon hearing the words of Dhruva Maharaj, became very compassionate toward him. And in order to show him his causeless mercy, he gave him the following expert advice. Purport. Since the great sage Narada is the foremost spiritual master, naturally his only activity is to bestow the greatest benefit upon whomever he meets. Dhruva Maharaj, however, was a child, and so his demand was also that of a playful child. Still, the great sage became compassionate toward him, and for his welfare, he spoke the following verses. Verse 40. Narada uvacha jananyabhihita pantaha savai nishreyasyate bhagavan vasudevastam bhajatam pravanatmana. Translation. The great sage Narada told Dhruva Maharaj, the instruction given by your mother, Suniti, is to follow the path of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is just suitable for you. You should therefore completely absorb yourself in the devotional service of the Lord. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj's demand was to achieve an abode even greater than Lord Brahma's. Within this universe, Lord Brahma is supposed to be in the most exalted position, for he is the chief of all demigods. But Dhruva Maharaj wanted a realm beyond his. Therefore, his desire was not to be fulfilled by worshiping any demigod. As described in the Bhagavad Gita, the benedictions offered by the demigods are all temporary. Therefore, Narada Muni asked Dhruva Maharaj to follow the path recommended by his mother, to worship Krishna, Vasudeva. When Krishna offers anything, it is beyond the expectation of the devotee. Both Suniti and Narada Muni knew that the demand of Dhruva Maharaj was impossible for any demigod to fulfill, and therefore both of them recommended following the process of devotional service to Lord Krishna. Narada Muni is referred to here as Bhagavan because he can bless any person, just as the Supreme Personality of Godhead can. He was very pleased with Dhruva Maharaj, and he could have at once personally given whatever he wanted. But that's not the duty of the spiritual master. His duty is to engage the disciple in proper devotional service, as prescribed in the Shastras. Krishna was similarly present before Arjuna, and even though he could have given him all facilities for victory over the opposing party without a fight, he did not do so. Instead, he asked Arjuna to fight. In the same way, Narada Muni asked Dhruva Maharaj to undergo devotional discipline in order to achieve the desired result. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhuktale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I seek blessings from all the assembled Vaishnavas, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. Please forgive me for any shortcomings. These two verses are a bit of a turning point in the story. For the last several verses, Dhruva and Narada have been trading this conversation back and forth. Narada has told him, listen, your mother gave you some good advice, but Dhruva, the austerity you'd have to perform is very severe. It's nearly impossible for the ordinary man. And we remember that Narada also offered him a different way forward. He said, take the path of equanimity. Learn to steady yourself in the face of happiness and distress. If you find someone wiser than you, take shelter under them. If someone is less wise than you, have compassion for them and befriend somebody who's equal to you. This will be enough. But was it enough to satisfy Dhruva? No. Dhruva said, give me the difficult path. See, I don't have a problem with happiness and distress. I'm not whipped around by these. I'm just covered in ignorance. Of course, there's some parallels here to the story we remember from the time that Yama tested Nachiketa, who was also a child. Now, in that story, remember, Nachiketa was granted 3 boons, and we won't go over all the details, but for the 3rd boon, he asked Yama, tell me, Yama, what happens after death? You'll remember in that story, Yama said, oh, no, anything but that. He said, I cannot answer that question. I'll give you all of the riches in the world. I'll make you a king over all of the land, but that question, I simply cannot answer that. But in that story, was it that Yama didn't know the answer or that he was afraid to reveal the secret to Nachiketa? No, it wasn't any of that. What Yama was doing was performing a test. He had to test the resolve of Nachiketa, and he had to see that this wasn't just a passing whim. And so he dangled these material rewards in front of Nachiketa just to see if he was ready to receive such deep instruction. And that's exactly what Narada Muni is doing here with Dhruva Maharaj. In a lecture from 2010, His Holiness Romapad Swami, he also spoke of a similar story. He spoke of when Narada was also performing this type of test on the Haryashvas. These are the 10,000 sons of Daksha, charged with propagating the material existence. Though the circumstances were a little different in that case, the pattern was very similar. Narada examined the Haryashvas with this riddle about distinguishing the material world from the spiritual world, and the Haryashvas immediately understood it. So because their intelligence was clear and their senses were controlled, Narada understood that these men were indeed fit for devotional service. And so similar to those stories, what we have here is that Narada has examined Dhruva, and he's tested his determination by giving him an alternate path. But once he saw the resolve of Dhruva, then he was prepared to offer up a clear explanation. But this is a clear explanation to do what exactly? It's a clear explanation to achieve full absorption in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we ask ourselves, why this route? What Narada is about to offer, as we'll see, this is an incredibly difficult path. It's filled with extreme austerity, as we'll see later on in this chapter. So why give such a difficult path to a small child? Narada did this because what Dhruva is asking for can only be accomplished through fully engaged devotional service. Now, after glorifying Narada Muni, Dhruva is asked for an honest path to a position that is even more exalted than has yet to be achieved in all of the three worlds. In fact, he specifically says, I want a position greater than anyone. I want this position to be even greater than the one held by my father. I want a position that's even greater than the one held by my grandfather. And of course, who's his grandfather? It's none other than Brahma himself. Now, Narada Muni has tested Dhruva's resolve, and he's feeling compassionate for the child. So now he's going to give Dhruva his very best advice. And here's where we remember that this is Narada's job. Ramapada Swami talked about this in his lecture as well, too. He is the leading spiritual master. He is the bearer of Bhakti Shakti. And as such, Narada can give expert instruction on Bhakti. Not only that, and this is an important point, there's more than one way to give Bhakti, and Narada knows best how to give it. So when Dhruva asked for a way to an abode even higher than Brahma, what do we do here? Well, we think about all of the devas. And when we think about all of the devas, who sits on top? It's Brahma, right? So if you want a position higher than the topmost deva in the chain, it's simply not going to be enough to render worship onto a deva. Now, we are used to hearing from many places that we're not really required to worship devas anyway, but we ask ourselves, why is that? Well, why do we worship devas? We worship devas sometimes when we're looking for some material benefit, but we know intrinsically that whatever benefit we're asking of a deva is material in nature and therefore is temporary in nature. It doesn't satisfy us eternally. It's passing. It only brings suffering. But as we've seen before, there's an even greater service to give. Giving service to the Lord directly is enough to generate the benefits that any deva can give. But even though that's the case, that's not exactly what's happening in this story, because in this case, there isn't a deva that can give Dhruva what he's asking for, because Dhruva is not asking for a material position. He's not asking for a material possession. What Dhruva is asking for is a position higher than what any deva can hold. So how could a deva possibly give him that? No, what Dhruva is asking for, what he's looking for, to get it, he must be absorbed in service to the Supreme. He must have his mind eternally fixed on Sri Krishna. That's the instruction that he's after. Otherwise, it's impossible. But as Ramapad Swami explains, there's only one authority that can make the impossible possible. Now, Dhruva isn't asking for money. He's not asking for a beautiful family. And even for what he's looking for, he's made it very clear. He wants an honest path. He doesn't want a shortcut. He doesn't want a quick fix. There is a sincerity in what the child is looking for, even if it is impossible. And Narada sees this resolve, and he tells Dhruva, you know what? I support your mother's advice. And Narada is going to tell Dhruva that he is now qualified to engage in significant devotional service to the Lord. And as we'll continue on in this chapter, we're going to get a wonderful telling of all of the austerities that Narada instructs of Dhruva. And later on, we're going to see Dhruva recede into the Madhuvana forest to begin this significant period of devotional service. But for today, we walk away knowing that there is one that can make the impossible possible, and that is Lord Sri Krishna. And by us rendering devotional service unto him, we can cross the material ocean easily. I'll conclude here. Hare Krishna.